For the first time in recorded history, the entire continental United States is experiencing what the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention calls widespread influenza activity. When a flu outbreak happens, the virus that gets people sick in Alabama may not be the same strain in Washington. So some parts of the country may have rougher flu seasons than others, depending on the strain. The CDC said there are two reasons for this widespread activity. First, most people getting the flu are picking up the H3N2 strain, which is notorious for mutating so fast that vaccines can't keep up. This year's vaccine is thought to be just 32% effective at stopping H3N2. Second, some hospitals are poorly equipped to deal with H3N2 because of supply shortages outside of vaccines. For example, some parts of the U.S. don't have enough of the intravenous fluid that delivers medicine to patients because hurricanes damaged the facilities in Puerto Rico where it's made. And in the hardest hit parts of the U.S., there's not enough antiviral medication.
A recent study has revealed the Black Death plague pandemic was most likely spread by humans, not rats. The bubonic plague devastated Europe from the 14th to 19th centuries. At its peak between 1347 and 1351, it killed about a third of Europe's population. Previously, scientists believed the disease was spread by fleas, jumping from infected rats to humans. However, a study published in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences on January 15th contradicts that theory. Researchers from the universities of Oslo and Ferrara came to the conclusion that the plague was most likely spread through human parasites, such as fleas and body lice. The researchers ran separate simulations of the disease being spread through rats, human parasites, and person-to-person contact. They found that mortality rates in the human parasite simulations matched up closest with the actual mortality rates recorded in 7 out of 9 medieval cities.
In much of the South, this is not a night to travel. A winter storm has shut down interstates. After many spinouts and pileups, air travel is no easier. More than 1,600 flights were canceled today, more than 3,000 delayed. This system is bringing snow and ice from Texas to the Northeast. Tennessee could get as much as 6 inches. In some places tomorrow morning, wind chills will be below zero. And Mark Strassman is following this.
For the third time in 2 weeks, snow and ice are snarling the south. In Kentucky, traffic was backed up for miles after several tractor-trailers and a bus were involved in a crash, closing down the highway. The temperature in Houston was 68 degrees yesterday. Today, it's in the 20s, and the region is under a winter storm warning, and it's going to worsen overnight.
If you don't have to be on the roads, please don't be on the roads. For the next 24 hours, it's going to be somewhat treacherous out there.
Some didn't heed the mayor's warning. There were over 100 wrecks in Harris County in just 6 hours this morning. The Houston Independent School District, the 7th largest in the U.S., was closed today. Weather also canceled school in parts of 8 other states, including Mississippi and Alabama. A section of I-49 was shut down in Shreveport, Louisiana, after black ice created havoc on roads.
It's certainly dangerous, and the people down here are not exactly used to it, and it could spell a recipe for disaster.
Parts of Tennessee had 7 inches of snow. Arkansas had 8. Kentucky had 9. Jeff, a winter storm warning is in effect all the way to Maine.
People in the Detroit area are wondering what lit up the sky Tuesday night. Social media blew up over a bright light overhead. Our station in Detroit, WWJ, says that as of now, there is no indication of any damage on the ground. In a Facebook post, the Ingham County Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management called it a, quote, natural meteor fireball.
is that?
Britain's Royal Air Force scrambled 2 fighter jets to intercept Russian bombers near UK airspace on Monday, in the latest incident highlighting ongoing tensions in the region. On January 15th, the RAF said that it scrambled Typhoon aircraft from an airbase in Scotland on a quick reaction alert as 2 Tupolev Tu-160 Blackjack bombers approached Britain. The Blackjacks were monitored as they flew past Norway and Denmark and near the Netherlands before the British jets picked them up roughly 30 miles from UK airspace. Monday's incident is the latest in recent years as Russian aircraft continue to test British and NATO air defenses. Russia's defense ministry in a statement Monday said, quote, all flights by Russian aircraft are performed in strict accordance with international rules for using airspace without infringement on any country's borders.
Japan's national broadcaster accidentally sent out a false alert about a North Korean missile launch. According to messages on NHK's website, the broadcaster issued the alert Tuesday, which warned residents to evacuate and seek shelter immediately. The error was reportedly corrected within minutes, and NHK apologized for the mistake. It's unclear exactly what caused it. NHK's false alert came just a few days after Hawaii issued one of its own. As we previously reported, officials say a Hawaii Emergency Management Agency employee accidentally pushed the wrong button.
North Korean state media lashed out Tuesday at U.S. President Donald Trump's recent tweet about having a bigger nuclear button on his desk than Kim Jong-un's. A commentary in Rodong Shinmun, the ruling party's publication, called the tweets the spasm of a lunatic and the bark of a rabid dog, according to a translation by the Wall Street Journal. The war of words between Kim and Trump escalated on New Year's Day when Kim said the entire U.S. mainland is within range of its nuclear missiles and, quote, the nuclear button is on my office desk all the time. The next day, Trump responded on Twitter, quote, I too have a nuclear button, but it is a much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works. Tensions between the two countries are rising even as North and South Korea engage in diplomatic talks.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping have expressed optimism that the ongoing talks between the two Koreas could eventually lead to a change in North Korea's provocative behavior. The White House said Tuesday that the leaders spoke over the phone the day before and discussed the latest developments on the Korean Peninsula, including the resumption last week of high-level dialogue between Seoul and Pyongyang. Trump and Xi agreed that the talks might prompt a change in North Korea's destructive behavior. The White House also said President Trump is committed to sustain the US-led global campaign of maximum pressure to compel North Korea to abandon its nuclear program.
A former CIA employee who was arrested Monday is reportedly suspected of betraying dozens of CIA assets in China and possibly causing the deaths or imprisonments of about 20 of them. The Department of Justice says Jerry Chun-Shing Lee was arrested after landing at JFK Airport in New York. Back in 2012, authorities found 2 books in Lee's possession that had the names and phone numbers of assets and undercover CIA employees, locations of undercover facilities, and notes about secret operations, among other information. The DOJ says at the time of those searches, Lee and his family were in the process of moving back to the U.S. NBC News reports that same year, the FBI convinced Lee to come back to the country with a fake job offer. They report no charges were filed. The DOJ says he's being charged with illegally possessing national defense information and could face 10 years in prison. But several outlets report Lee is tied to much more than just those 2 notebooks. Sources say he helped the Chinese government identify assets in a systematic effort to cripple U.S. spying in the country. That operation started in 2010 and resulted in the deaths or imprisonment of 18 to 20 CIA assets, according to the New York Times. Lee started working at the CIA in 1994. During his time there, the DOJ says he had a top-secret security clearance and access to highly sensitive information. His clearance was canceled when he stopped working for the U.S. government in 2007. Lee is a naturalized U.S. citizen, but he was living in Hong Kong at the time of his arrest. Officials tell NBC News it's unlikely he'll be charged with espionage.
Facebook is being accused of revealing detailed information on a group of Dakota Access Pipeline activists to prosecutors. That's according to documents obtained by the online news site The Intercept. Well, after an executive order from President Trump, the pipeline is set to be expanded across Native American land and pass underneath the Missouri River. The activists organised a protest against it using their Facebook page, and around 100 Indigenous people blocked traffic on a freeway for about an hour, but later peacefully dispersed and no arrests were made. The local prosecutor had twice sought information on this group from the social media site. According to documents, Facebook apparently helped them get a warrant approved through the Department of Justice. Activist Tina McKim thinks it was part, though, of a deliberate effort to scare supporters away.
Not only does this warrant attempt to scare people from organising, this warrant attempts to scare people from even looking at information.
A major Chinese credit rating agency has cut the sovereign ratings of the United States to BBB+ from A-, putting the American economy on par with Peru, Colombia and Turkmenistan. In a statement on Tuesday, Dagon Global Credit Rating cited Washington's recent tax reduction scheme as weakening the country's ability to repay its debt. The agency also warned that America's increasing reliance on debt to drive development would erode its solvency. The ratings downgrade is in stark contrast with US ratings agencies. Moody's has given its highest AAA sovereign rating for the US economy, while S&P Global rates it at AA+.
A column of smoke rising from East China Sea as a tanker carrying 136,000 tons of fuel burned for a week after a collision. On Sunday, the ship sank, with all of its 32 crew members believed dead. The natural gas condensate which the ship was carrying continued to burn after the vessel sank. With the fire finally put out, authorities are worried about expanding oil slicks drifting northward. Stretching 18 kilometers in some places, it appears to be the largest tanker oil spill since 1991.
The oil will contain some kind of toxic material which will do harm to the sea animals, sea plants.
As most of the condensate would have burned off, the disaster is unlikely to leave the kind of thick black oil slicks that are typical in crude oil spills. But remaining condensate will be much more difficult to separate from water. It's lightweight and colorless and could break down and disperse quickly. Once trapped under the surface, the toxic material can cause serious damage to marine life in an already polluted ocean.
Syrian opposition sources are reporting this morning Israel struck the military airfield in Damascus, also adding that ammunition depots belonging to Lebanese Iranian proxy Hezbollah were damaged in the strike. This comes a week after the Syrian army said Israel targeted other sites in Syria with fighter jets and ground-to-ground missiles. As usual, there's no Israeli confirmation to these reports, but Israel has repeatedly said it will not allow Hezbollah to obtain strategic weapons.
Iran's supreme leader is accusing Saudi Arabia of committing treason against Muslims by aligning itself with the United States and Israel. Saudi Arabia does not recognize Israel, but the two nations have developed clandestine ties to confront Iran, which repeatedly calls for Israel's destruction. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei told parliamentary representatives from Islamic countries that it was treason to cooperate with what he called the Zionist regime. Iran and Saudi Arabia are engaged in a Cold War for influence in the Middle East, backing different sides in proxy conflicts. Israel's ambassador to Germany, Jeremy Sakharov, says Israelis are taking precautions amid reports of an Iranian spy ring operating in Germany. Authorities are on the hunt for 10 foreign spies who have allegedly been spying on Jews and Israelis in the country. German intelligence agents say the spies have been operating on behalf of a group with links to Iran. It's not clear how long they've been active in Germany. The raids are being conducted throughout the country.
Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has rejected President Donald Trump's anticipated peace plan as a slap in the face, threatening, "We will slap back." Abbas was giving a defiant speech to the Palestine Liberation Organization's Central Council in Ramallah. He said the Palestinians would not accept the plan, which has yet to be unveiled. He said only an international committee could mediate the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
كمان who came out on Twitter and said that he will not waste money on the Palestinians because they refuse to negotiate. What? Really? Yahreb Betak. When did we refuse to negotiate? Since you're president, we met 4 times and we talked about 4 or 5 more times on the phone. And I told you I'm ready to do the negotiations. In the end, the negotiations, I do not want to tell you where they are. It's a shame. Seriously? Shame.
There's been alarm in Gaza and at the United Nations at a US announcement that it's withholding half of a $125 million aid installment for the Palestinians. One official said the move would have devastating consequences for thousands of vulnerable people. It comes 2 weeks after President Trump questioned the value of such funding.
We're not giving up on peace talks. We're not giving up on those conversations. It's something very important to this administration. Secretary Tillerson ultimately made this decision in consultation with other members of the administration. And so that's where things landed.
But members of the Palestinian Liberation Organization say that Palestinians are being punished and that Trump is favoring Israel in his Mideast policy. President Trump announced Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, but he doesn't have the right to do so in a move against international law and other agreements. The other issue is that now he's trying to cut the aid for the UN Relief Agency and put more pressure to delete the refugees' rights of return. At the United Nations, Secretary General Antonio Guterres has said he hopes the funds will be forthcoming and stressed that the UN Relief Agency provides vital services to Palestinian refugees in both the occupied territories and in Jordan, Syria and Lebanon.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he believes the American embassy in Israel will move from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem within a year. Netanyahu made his comments to Israeli reporters covering his trip to India. This comes as U.S. Special Envoy Jason Greenblatt is coming to Israel on Wednesday for crisis talks with the Middle East Quartet. Israel's Channel 10 is reporting he will meet with senior diplomats from Russia, the EU and the UN to discuss the American proposed Israeli-Palestinian peace plan. This comes after the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas dismissed the plan as a slap in the face and rejected the U.S. as a mediator. Israeli security forces removed a bomb on Monday from Joseph's tomb in Nablus, this according to the IDF spokesperson's unit. The bomb was found in a cell phone during security checks, as around 1,000 Jewish worshippers were on their way to the site. As this was happening, protesters threw rocks at security forces upon their entry and departure to Joseph's tomb, damaging the bus, resulting in no casualties.
There was a big drop in the number of new asylum seekers in Germany last year to just under 190,000. But the country's Interior Minister Thomas de Maizière says he still considers that figure much too high. In 2016, when the Balkan refugee route was largely shut down, that figure was almost 100,000 more, with a peak of 890,000 in 2015. De Maizière said that refugees, particularly from the Middle East and Afghanistan, remained a general European problem, but for now the greatest influx was past for Germany. Almost half of rejected asylum seekers in the country won on appeal last year. Franziska Wilmar from Amnesty International Germany said that courts are trying to improve the quality of the decisions being made on refugee asylum requests. It's almost, she adds, like saying to the incoming government, if they don't want the courts to be overburdened anymore, they should change their course and allow for more family reunification claims to be approved in the first place. Because currently most claims are requests to be reunited with other family members. A more than 2-year-long migration crisis has caused immigration to become a major political issue in many European countries. In France, a record number of asylum requests were recorded last year, rising by 17% to over 100,000.
Well, staying in France now, the northern port city of Calais continues to be at the centre of the country's migrant crisis. That's more than a year after the notorious jungle camp was dismantled. Hundreds of refugees remain stranded there, trying to reach British shores. French President Emmanuel Macron is visiting Calais right now to defend his policies to locals and officials. That's ahead of Thursday's meeting on migration with the British Prime Minister.
I need to stay here. But when did you arrive?
We have 3 months.
You arrived 3 months ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
3 months ago.
And here?
Yes.
But in France?
In France, yeah.
And in France?
In French, 4 months.
4 months?
Yeah.
President Macron wants Britain's help in easing the migrant situation and will seek to renegotiate a border agreement that allows the UK to have a checkpoint on French soil, an issue that has partly been blamed for the ongoing crisis.
The migrant issue has been a long-standing source of tension between France and the UK. Some in France see the situation in Calais and other northern French ports as one of Britain's making, and so for the UK to sort out.
Maybe French authorities should see with the UK about agreements so these migrants can go over there.
President Emmanuel Macron said before the Brexit vote, when he was French economy minister, that if the UK did leave the EU, then London should process the migrants in Dover. That's not believed to be something Paris is pushing for now, but it does want more of an effort from the UK to overhaul the 2003 Le Touquet agreement. Paris is pressuring London to speed up processing, to take in more minors seeking to join relatives and friends in the UK, and to pay more to enforce border controls in Calais. Ahead of Thursday's Franco-British summit, Theresa May's spokesman suggested London is happy with the Le Touquet agreement as it is, saying, "This is an agreement which has served both sides well since its inception. I would point out the fact that we have provided help already, such as through the provision of extra security fencing." While these are bilateral talks, the Calais question could weigh in ongoing Brexit negotiations. With Theresa May's government up against the EU 27, France will want to push its interests and may use a deal on migration as a bargaining chip in any wider deal on UK-EU trade.
The European Union seems to be jumping at the chance to coax the UK into staying in the Union after all.
We, here on the continent, haven't had a change of heart. Our hearts are still open to you.
The UK already voted to leave the bloc, but there's been some talk lately about holding a do-over vote, and even prominent anti-EU campaigners like Nigel Farage are entertaining the idea.
The percentage that would vote to leave next time would be very much bigger.
The Leave vote won the Brexit referendum by a slim margin in 2016. Farage's statement has some pro-EU groups fired up about the possibility of another vote, but Jeremy Corbyn, leader of the pro-EU Labour Party, says he won't call for another vote. And the EU's encouragement to stay comes as it's further tightening guidelines for the split against the UK. The EU's latest draft of a Brexit blueprint would require EU authorization to keep the UK in its current EU trade deals. The UK also couldn't reject would-be EU migrants who want to work in the UK without first introducing new immigration rules, according to the Financial Times. The Union also wants EU citizens to maintain their freedom of movement during the transition. That means EU citizens would be able to travel, live, and work in the UK. And another key stipulation, the EU is talking about keeping the UK subject to its court system during the transition from EU to non-EU member. That's a process that could take 1.5 to 2 years.
The University of Iowa is caught up in a legal fight with a conservative Christian student group that denied a leadership position to a student who is gay. The group, called Business Leaders in Christ, says its membership is open to everyone, but its leaders must affirm a statement of faith that rejects homosexuality. The university says it respects the right to practice religion, but does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. The group's campus registration was then revoked, and now they're suing. A hearing is set for Thursday on a request from the group to reinstate its on-campus privileges.
Finally tonight here, America Strong, a brother and sister, and the power of music. Bo has Down syndrome and doesn't talk very much. But when they began to sing You Are My Sunshine, Mom Amanda caught the moment.
You make me
Family has used music to teach Bo how to talk. Doctors told them Bo wouldn't speak for a few more years, but through music, he's on his way. Bo has now mastered about a dozen words. His first word 3 months ago, they say happy. It turns out that was the song Bo's parents would sing to him in intensive care. Born with a weak heart, tonight his heart is full.
Hey, David. It's
This evening, sending this message to us.
We're so proud of our kids and the love that they have for this sweet little guy, and we hope the world will see it.
We hope so too. The power of love, of music, of family.